If you've ever been humiliated at work in front of your entire team, then you'll understand what it means to sit there, smiling, pretending you're not unraveling inside. That was me, sitting in a room full of people I used to admire, listening to my boss rank us from most vital to least valuable, like we were livestock being sorted for auction. And I came last. Dead last. Let's be honest, said Barry Holcomb, senior project director and expert in weaponized smugness. If there's one person who can afford to wait for lunch, it's Dessa. She's, what do the kids say? Low impact. The conference room roared with laughter. 28 colleagues. Some laughed too hard. Some looked down at their phones, embarrassed for me. But no one said a word. Not one. I felt the blood rush to my face. I looked down at my notebook, pretending to be fascinated by a half-finished doodle of a coffee mug. I could feel the eyes, the pity, the satisfaction. And Barry? He just grinned. Like a man who believed there would never be consequences. Because there never had been. I'd been working at Velmeyer and Crane for 11 months. Junior analyst. Quiet. Precise. Always on time. I didn't gossip. I didn't fight for credit. I didn't play the game. And that's exactly why Barry hated me. He liked loud people. He liked easy wins. He liked being the smartest guy in the room, even when someone else had done all the thinking for him. I just did the work. I stayed late. I corrected formulas in his decks. I cleaned up timelines that Jenna forgot to submit. I once saved a 6-figure contract by noticing a discrepancy in the client's renewal clause. And no one ever knew. Barry took the credit, and I stayed invisible. Until that day, when he decided to make it official. Everyone eats by seniority today, he said, like we were in some dystopian kindergarten. And our girl Dessa here, well, she'll keep the coffee warm. Everyone laughed again. I smiled. And I waited. I waited while the food got cold. While the team picked at their sandwiches and sliders. While Barry made his little lunch table speeches, pretending he was mentoring instead of slowly poisoning morale. And then the door opened. And everything changed. The room fell silent. Because standing in the doorway, sharp suit, no nonsense, radiating command, was Nathan Cross, CEO of Halverson Global, our largest client. I'd only ever seen him once on a Zoom call, and that was from the back row. Barry stood immediately, half chewing a bite of turkey wrap. Mr. Cross. What a surprise. We didn't. I'm here to find someone, Nathan interrupted. Of course, Barry said quickly. Our team is honored. Anything you need, I need Dessa Elliot. Every head turned toward me. Me. Still sitting. Still hungry. Still red in the face from humiliation just 10 minutes earlier. Barry blinked. I'm sorry, who? Nathan walked further into the room. Dessa Elliot. Junior analyst. She flagged a financial modeling discrepancy in your Q3 report that saved our company over $2.8 million in forecasted losses. You could have heard a pin drop. She did that? Barry asked, voice suddenly small. She did. Not you. Not Jenna. Not the guy you just promoted for Visionary Initiative. It was her. And I want her in the next executive strategy session. Directly. I stood up. Slowly. Nathan looked at me like I was the only real professional in the room. I've been trying to find you, he said. You don't answer LinkedIn. My voice didn't feel real when I said, I didn't think anyone was looking. He smiled. Well, I'm looking now. Then he turned to Barry. Next time you mock your smartest employee in front of 28 witnesses, consider how easily one of them might be your replacement. Barry didn't speak. Couldn't. Nathan looked at me again. Ready to go? I grabbed my notebook, the one Barry had once called a security blanket, and followed him out of the room. No one laughed that time. That afternoon, I sat in a penthouse boardroom across from executives twice my age. I answered questions on predictive modeling, contract safeguards, and multi-sector compliance like I'd been doing it my whole life. Because I had. Quietly. Invisibly. Until now. And the best part? They listened. Because Nathan didn't bring me in as a token. He brought me in as a fixer. By the end of the week, Halverson Global requested that I oversee a special advisory portfolio, independently. A promotion outside of Barry's structure. Direct reporting access. Full visibility. Suddenly, Barry couldn't use me anymore. Suddenly, he wasn't allowed to touch my work, or speak for me, or mock me publicly without consequences. And the moment I got my first project approved, I walked into his office and set the printed contract on his desk. He looked at it. "What is this?" I smiled. "Lunch. Served cold." The Monday after Halverson Global offered me the advisory lead, I returned to the Velmeyer and Crane offices not as an analyst, but as a storm they didn't see coming. My nameplate hadn't changed, but the energy had. People didn't look at me the same way. Some nodded too quickly. Some looked down. A few avoided me entirely. Barry didn't speak to me. He passed my desk twice that morning without so much as a glance. Not out of guilt. No. Barry didn't feel guilt. It was damage control. He was trying to recalibrate. Recalculate. The thing about men like Barry is they don't apologize. They just wait for the spotlight to move so they can keep performing the same tricks in the dark. But I'd already pulled the curtain. By mid-morning, I received an invitation to a meeting I wasn't supposed to be in. Q2 Strategic Growth Objectives. All department heads. No juniors. Definitely not low-impact employees. Except this time I was the impact. I walked into the conference room exactly 1 minute early. Enough to be noticed. Enough to show I wasn't waiting outside anymore. Jenna looked up from her laptop, mouth slightly open. Her chair was where mine used to be, 2 seats down from Barry, directly across from the projector. She blinked at me, uncertain. I gave her a nod. Professional. Chilly. Barry walked in behind me and did a double take. He looked at the agenda, then at me. "You're not." "Nathan Cross added me personally," I said calmly, taking the seat at the end of the table. "We'll be collaborating directly on Halverson's environmental rollout this quarter." Barry's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. The meeting began, but the tone had shifted. People deferred to me more than they meant to. They quoted my insights. Someone even cited a data model I built 6 months ago, the one Barry had once told me to leave to the senior analysts. Afterwards, Barry pulled me aside in the hallway. "I don't know what Cross sees in you," he said quietly, venom wrapped in faux composure. "But don't get too comfortable. These people cycle favorites fast." "Good thing I'm not here to be a favorite," I replied. "I'm here to build things you never could." He stared at me like he'd never actually seen me before. And maybe he hadn't. Not really. 4 months, I'd existed under their radar. Not because I lacked value, but because I wasn't interested in playing politics. But now, I understood something dangerous. They didn't fear being wrong. They feared being replaced. And I was already making myself irreplaceable. By Friday, I'd signed 2 additional internal contracts through Halverson's partnership. Projects that used Velmeyer's resources, but reported externally to me. It was an unprecedented structure, but legal couldn't find any clause to block it. Nathan had baked it into the client renewal, and Barry hadn't read the fine print before he rushed to sign it. Rookie mistake. Especially for someone who once made me fetch his lunch. The higher-ups began to notice the shift. A week later, the regional VP scheduled a casual check-in with me, which was anything but. He asked how I liked the advisory work, how I was finding the leadership adjustment, whether I'd be open to internal expansion opportunities. "I'm open," I said. "As long as I report above Barry." He smiled tightly. "We'll be in touch." And they were. Within a month, I was offered a new title, Strategic Transformation Liaison, a role created just for me, sitting halfway between client-side and firm-side, with a dotted line report directly to the C-suite. Barry tried to block it. Tried to claim I was unproven. Tried to dredge up a single spreadsheet error I'd made in my 2nd month. It didn't work. Because Nathan Cross sent a memo. One that got circulated, intentionally or not, across nearly every floor of the building. "If Dessa Elliot isn't part of your strategic leadership team in the next 30 days, we'll be taking the Halverson account elsewhere. Permanently." After that, no one questioned my promotion. Not out loud. But the whispers returned. Different this time. Now I was too ambitious. Too fast. Dangerous. They didn't know if I'd earned my seat or just blackmailed my way into it. And I let them wonder. Because I'd played by the rules before. All it earned me was last place in the lunch line. Now, I was rewriting the menu. Barry kept his distance. For a while. But I knew him. He wasn't done. People like Barry don't disappear. They wait. They wait until you get comfortable. Until you think the storm has passed. And then they come for your foundation. So I didn't relax. I prepared. I started keeping my own records. My own inbox archive. Documenting every exchange. Every meeting. Every slide edit he made without approval. I tracked every time he contradicted client instructions or redirected my work to his team behind closed doors. And then, one afternoon in late May, I caught him red-handed. A Slack message from Barry to Jenna, accidentally CC'd to me. We need to reroute the credit for the cross project back to internal. Let Dessa think she's leading it, but pitch the deck under our team's banner. He'll never know. I stared at the message for 10 straight seconds. No panic. No rage. Just clarity. It was time. Time to show them what least valuable really looked like, when she finally started playing offense. When Barry accidentally CC'd me on the message, the one where he and Jenna planned to reroute credit for my project, I didn't reply. I didn't react. I didn't even breathe differently. I just let it sit. Because people like Barry operate on assumption. He assumed I wouldn't see it. Then, once he realized I had, he'd assume I didn't have the power to do anything about it. And I needed him to keep assuming. For now. Over the next week, I watched Jenna and Barry slowly clone my deck. Not perfectly, of course. Jenna never understood pacing, and Barry kept inserting buzzwords like disruptive synergy that made actual executives roll their eyes. I kept the real version private. Mine had the updated compliance model. The cross-sector simulations. The plug-and-play dashboard that Nathan had been asking for since March. The one I built quietly after hours while everyone else was at rooftop happy hours pretending to brainstorm. Barry scheduled the client presentation for Thursday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. No invite came to me. Not even a courtesy CC. It was bold. But he'd already told himself a story. That I was too new to fight back. Too cautious to escalate. That I'd freeze up, maybe cry, then retreat back into quiet submission where I belonged. What he didn't know was that I'd already told Nathan. Not everything, not yet. Just enough. I sent him a clean email. Subject, for your eyes only. Accurate Halverson model deck. Attached. My real proposal. 2 hours later he replied. Let them present first. I'll handle it. I read that message twice. Then again. Let them present first. The trap was set. Thursday morning arrived with a strange, electric stillness. I walked into the building like any other day. Slacks, blazer, notepad under arm. But my heartbeat was low. Slow. Focused. I had the silence of a loaded spring. The calm of someone who already knows how the story ends. Barry, on the other hand, strutted through the glass doors like he was already measuring new curtains for his future corner office. Jenna followed him like a shadow, lips tight, nerves masked with overconfidence. At 9 a.m., they began. I stayed at my desk. Halfway through their presentation, my screen lit up with a Slack ping from Jenna. Why is Cross just sitting there saying nothing? I didn't reply. Another ping. Did you talk to him? Still nothing. At 9:27, my office phone rang. Nathan. I picked up. You might want to join us, he said calmly. The counterfeit deck has been sufficiently reviewed. I didn't rush. I walked in exactly at 9:33. They were mid-slide. The room was silent except for Barry's voice, over-explaining a predictive model he didn't build, with data he didn't understand. Nathan looked up and smiled. Ah, the actual architect has arrived. Barry turned. Dessa, this is a closed session. No, Barry, Nathan said smoothly. This is a correction. He clicked the remote and projected my version of the deck onto the screen. No more placeholders. No half-baked graphs. Just polished, precise insight. You tried to sell us this, Nathan said, nodding toward Barry's laptop. But this is the deck we'll be paying for. Jenna was pale. Barry's jaw clenched. I'm not sure what happened here, Barry said slowly. There must have been a miscommunication. No, Barry, I said. You tried to repackage my work and pitch it as your own. Again. Nathan turned to me. Would you walk us through your actual model? I did. Clearly. Confidently. Without a single glance at my notes. Barry slumped into silence. Jenna looked down. No one interrupted. When I finished, Nathan folded his hands. Well, he said, now that the truth's out, I have one final announcement. He stood. Effective immediately, Halverson Global will no longer be working through Mr. Holcomb for strategic implementation. All future collaboration will go directly through Ms. Elliot. A silence dropped across the room like thunder. Barry choked. Wait, what? Nathan looked at him, full CEO mode now. Barry, you've built a career off of other people's talent. But unfortunately for you, some of that talent has finally started speaking up. And I don't do business with thieves. Jenna opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. Nathan turned to me. I'll let you take it from here. He left. The second the door closed, Barry turned to me. Not angry, but almost desperate. Dessa, we can fix this. You can't just. You're right, I said, packing up my laptop. I can't fix this. Because I'm not here to clean up your mess anymore. I walked out of that room taller than I ever had before. Not because I was proud. Not because I'd won. But because I didn't need to be liked anymore. I had something better. Proof. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Barry didn't speak to me for 5 days after the presentation. No email. No Slack messages. No snide hallway comments or smug looks. Just silence, the kind that hums with calculation. I knew better than to think he was finished. Barry Holcomb didn't fade out. He didn't go down quietly. He regrouped. He schemed. And sure enough, on the morning of the 6th day, I got an urgent meeting request from HR titled, Inquiry. Breach of Protocol Allegation. At first I laughed. Then I got quiet. Because I understood instantly. This wasn't about correcting anything. It was about erasing me. Barry had found a new angle, accused me of improper access, of overstepping, of unethical behavior with the Halverson contract. He couldn't beat me with work. So he tried to bury me in policy. But what Barry didn't know was that I had been documenting everything. Every edit I made. Every file I created. Every line of code. Every timestamp. Every voice memo. Every folder that proved exactly how the Halverson project was developed, who touched it, when and why. I walked into that HR room already armed. Sarah from HR sat across from me with a too bright smile and a legal pad in front of her. Barry sat beside her, pretending to be casual, one ankle resting on his knee. Dessa, she began, we just want to go over a few concerns that have been raised. Raised by Barry, I assume, I interrupted. Sarah hesitated. Well, yes. Barry leaned forward. We just want to be sure that your collaboration with Halverson followed company protocol. Some of the documentation appears to have been modified outside of secure drives. It was. Sarah blinked. I'm sorry. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a printed binder. Thick. Tabbed. Time-stamped. With a digital backup sitting on the HR server, waiting for verification. I completed all Halverson work independently, I said. Outside the shared drives because Barry and Jenna were attempting to copy and alter my files. You'll find screenshots, emails, and access logs proving that. Including a Slack message from Barry instructing Jenna to let Dessa think she's leading it. Sarah flipped to the first tab. Her expression changed. Barry tried to interject. This isn't admissible. You can't just compile. Actually, I said coolly, every file is time-stamped, watermarked, and in compliance with the new data integrity protocol rolled out in January. Which you didn't attend the training for. Sarah looked stunned. This is thorough. I also have proof that Barry has been editing team submissions without consent, misattributing work, and leaking internal data to external vendors to inflate his quarterly pipeline metrics. Barry exploded. This is a setup. It's a pattern, I corrected. One the board will be very interested in. That's when Barry stood up, knocking his chair over. You think you're better than me? He spat. You think you're going to rewrite the whole system because some client likes your cute little models? Sarah stood too. Barry. No, let her hear it, he barked. You're nothing, Dessa. A junior analyst who got lucky. That's all you'll ever be. I didn't flinch. I don't need to be better than you, Barry, I said quietly. I just needed to make sure you finally got caught. And then I handed Sarah a flash drive. Send that to the board, I said. They'll want to review it before next week's audit hearing. Barry's face went from red to ash. Wait, what hearing? Sarah looked at him, then back at me. She's within her rights, she said. We've received multiple complaints. It's been escalated. That was the last time I ever saw Barry Holcomb in the Velmeyer and Crane offices. He was placed on administrative leave the next morning. By Friday, his company laptop was boxed and collected. His name scrubbed from the internal directory. And me? I was asked to brief the board personally. They wanted to know what I'd seen, what I'd built, what I'd protected the company from. And for the first time in my career, people didn't just listen to me, they asked me to lead. One board member, a woman named Lizette Cho, pulled me aside after the meeting. You realize what you did here, right? I shrugged. Stuck up for myself? She smiled. You exposed a systemic flaw we've ignored for years. You didn't just protect Halverson's trust. You set a new standard. That afternoon, they offered me a new role. Executive partner. My name, my actual name, on the door. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. And Barry? Well, the last I heard, he tried to get a consulting job. But apparently, when your name is flagged in 3 client complaints, doors stop opening. Funny how that works. I once stood at the back of the lunch line, stomach growling, head down, waiting for someone to see me. Now, I don't wait anymore. The nameplate on my new door read, Dessa Elliot, Executive Partner, Strategic Integrity Division. 16 words I never thought I'd see together. Not because I didn't think I was worthy, but because I had finally stopped waiting for someone else to say I was. I stood in the doorway of my new corner office, sunlight flooding the minimalist desk setup, the skyline stretching out beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass. It should have felt like a victory. But it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning. After Barry's dismissal, after Jenna's quiet resignation a week later, she couldn't survive without him pulling strings. I thought things might calm down. But promotions don't silence politics. They amplify them. Whispers followed me into every meeting. She only got the role because Halverson backed her. Let's see how long she lasts without a scandal to leverage. She's not C-suite material. She's just clever with timing. It didn't matter. Because while they were whispering, I was designing. Not vengeance. Structure. I didn't want to survive Velmeyer and Crane. I wanted to transform it. The culture here had let Barry thrive for over a decade. That wasn't just his fault. That was systemic rot. And systems don't change with a resignation letter. They change with blueprints. Rebuilding. Resistance. So I launched the Strategic Integrity Division with one mission. Expose what's broken. Protect what's worth saving. And prevent future Barrys from rising through the cracks. We started small, anonymous pipeline audits, workflow equity reviews, internal mentorship pairing for overlooked staff. But it grew fast. Within 6 weeks, the internal report from my division was being used in quarterly C-suite decisions. A month later, I was invited to present our findings at a national leadership summit in Chicago. Suddenly, people were quoting me. Not just repeating me, restructuring their firms based on the models I designed in silence back when no one would stay in the room after I spoke. It wasn't just Velmeyer and Crane anymore. It was everywhere. I remember sitting alone in my office late one Thursday, revisiting that HR report I'd written. The one that ended Barry's career. My hand hovered over the keyboard. I could have deleted it, wiped it from my files, moved on clean. But I didn't. Because that moment, ugly as it was, had taught me something vital. Silence was never safety. People like Barry thrive because they assume the people they trample will never document, never speak, never fight. I chose to make that assumption fatal. A few weeks later, I hosted our first internal roundtable on cultural recalibration. Dozens of employees attended. Some virtually. Many in person. But I noticed one face in particular. A young woman from accounting. Her badge read, Melina V. She kept her head low, barely spoke. But after the meeting, she stayed behind. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I nodded. "Were you scared?" she asked. "When you stood up to him?" I paused. "Terrified," I said honestly. But I was more scared of disappearing quietly than I was of failing loudly. She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you for not disappearing." That moment stuck with me. Because that's what this was all about now. Not proving Barry wrong. Not even proving myself right. But staying visible. Staying loud. Staying unerasable. The board took notice. So did the press. One day I walked into the break room to see a magazine flipped open on the counter. From Afterthought to Architect. How Dessa Elliot is Rewriting Corporate Power. I stared at the page, half stunned. Because it wasn't a feature about revenge. It was about redesign. They talked about my initiatives, my reforms, my models. Not the moment I was humiliated over lunch. Because that moment? It wasn't the end. It was the catalyst. And now? I was building systems where no one, not Melina, not any other low-impact analyst, would have to go through what I did to be heard. And just when I thought things couldn't come more full circle, I got an email. Subject: Panel Invitation. CEO Roundtable, Halverson Global, March 14th. I opened it. There in bold print was the lineup. Keynote: Nathan Cross, CEO, Halverson Global. Panel: Executive Leadership in Modern Integrity Systems. Featuring Dessa Elliot, Velmeyer and Crane. Barry once told me I'd never be more than a background detail. Now I was sitting next to the man who walked in and changed everything the day I was told to eat last. Only this time, I wouldn't be standing behind him. I'd be speaking next to him. And soon, above. March 14th arrived wrapped in a brisk wind and an impossible kind of clarity. The panel was being held at the Grantham, a glass-paneled high-rise event venue downtown, just 10 blocks from the office where I once stood clutching a paper plate, waiting to be called valuable enough to eat lunch. Funny how time works. And karma. The ballroom was gorgeous. Polished wood floors, sky-high ceilings, soft white light drenching everything in quiet reverence. Rows of suited professionals murmured politely. PR reps checked microphones. Event coordinators buzzed around the stage. I stood backstage, flipping my note cards. I wouldn't need them. I already knew every word. Nathan Cross walked in just before the event opened. "You ready?" he asked, clasping my hand. "I was ready the moment you said my name out loud in that room," I replied. He smiled. "Then give them hell." I didn't give them hell. I gave them truth. When it was my turn to speak, I walked on stage to polite applause. I took my seat between two men whose bios listed six-figure bonuses and leadership seminars in Zurich. And then the moderator turned to me. "Ms. Elliot, you've had, let's say, a meteoric rise. Would you mind sharing what sparked it?" I adjusted the microphone and smiled. "Certainly," I said. "It started with lunch." Some chuckles in the crowd. Curious looks. I was told publicly that I was the least valuable person in my department. That I would eat last. Because I didn't make noise. Because I wasn't loud or boastful. Because I stayed late, quietly fixed other people's mistakes, and never asked for credit. I paused. That day, I was humiliated in front of nearly 30 colleagues. And that same hour, the CEO of our biggest client walked into the building asking for the miracle worker who had saved his company from a multimillion-dollar error. The room was silent now. That worker was me. And from that moment on, I stopped waiting to be invited to the table. I brought my own. Nathan watched me from the front row, arms crossed, eyes warm with pride. I used to believe the best way to rise was to work hard and stay quiet. But silence doesn't protect you. It just makes you easier to erase. So I documented. I confronted. I exposed. And when my former manager tried to discredit me by stealing my work, again, I let him dig the hole. I just handed him the shovel. Laughter rippled through the room. And then I looked out at the hundreds of faces. Executives, interns, HR managers, students, all listening. "I didn't come here today to talk about vengeance," I said. "I came to talk about visibility. About building systems that recognize value before it becomes too late. I was lucky. But brilliance shouldn't require luck to be seen. And then I told them about Melina from accounting. About the anonymous audits. The Slack logs. The fact that some of the most powerful shifts at our company had come from people without titles. Just observation and guts. By the time I finished, the room was quiet again. No phones. No whispering. Just the kind of stillness that meant they heard me. And when I stood to leave the stage, they stood with me. A standing ovation. The girl who was once told to take lunch last now couldn't leave the stage for applause. After the event, dozens of people came up to shake my hand. Students asked to intern. Executives offered to collaborate. One woman, mid-40s, firm handshake, steel gray hair, leaned in and said, "I sat in a room once and laughed when someone made a joke like the one they made to you. I never stood up. I will now." And I believed her. That night, back in my office, I opened my email. There in bold. Subject, Internal Policy Update Approved, Elliot Clause, to be included in firm-wide reporting standards. It was official. My work, my name, was now embedded in the structure of the company. I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window. Below, the city pulsed with movement. Taxis, headlights, buildings glittering like pixels of possibility. This wasn't just a comeback story. It was a transformation. From scapegoat to strategist. From silent worker to systemic builder. From last in line to the one who rewrote the menu entirely. Barry. Long gone. But what he built, the hierarchy of silence, fear, favoritism, that's what I dismantled. Piece by piece. So to anyone out there waiting for permission, waiting to be picked, waiting to be called valuable, don't. You're not here to eat last. You're here to lead.